Hello, everyone. Reverend Ed here. I am broadcasting outside in Massachusetts. So you're seeing this video on Sunday, December 26th, or at another time, possibly on YouTube or because a friend has shared it with you. So welcome to this message this Sunday, this time after our Christmas. Just a word in our churches on Christmas Eve. We had originally planned to have Christmas Eve service at each of the three churches, 5, 7, and 9, and we were going to Zoom one of those services at 9. This week, due to increased cases of COVID in Maine, due to increased direct contacts that we are aware of, with recommendations from our conference office that we do not engage in congregational singing, that we have to kind of peel back on that a little bit to be safe. Well, with all these recommendations and several parishioners contacted me with concerns, we decided through your leadership to have 100% Zoom lessons and carols, a worship service on Christmas Eve, and 9 o'clock we chose as the service. I thank you for your flexibility in all of that. I really wish that we could have all been together at each church. Um, but it's important that we remain vigilant in the face of this pandemic. It's important that we keep each other safe through wearing masks, using hand sanitizers, socially distancing, not singing, but finding creative ways to add music and the musical element into our worship services. So I thank you for your flexibility and grace over these past 2 years, ever since went into the pandemic and through the outdoor services and through coming back into the church. You've been very graceful. You've been very patient and flexible. So I thank you for all of that. Today we are talking about um, the concept of putting on Christ. And in our reading of Colossians chapter 3, in verse 12, so as those who have chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on the heart, and then there's several things are listed, the heart of compassion, the heart of kindness, of humility, of gentleness, and patience. I picture a medieval knight, right? A medieval knight is all about strength, all about protection, all about safeguarding others, right? And you can picture it as you picture it in your mind's eye that the knight would put on their garments, and then they would put on perhaps chainmail, and then they would put on armor, and then they would put on gloves that had protection for their wrists and their forearms. They put on a helmet, right? And you can picture this knight with protection. We can even look to a samurai warrior. And if you've ever seen a picture of a samurai warrior, they had specially designed armor that would deflect swords off of the armor. So it was made in layers, and it was silky and it was very strong with tensile strength, and the sword would just slide off of their armor. So again, an armor, right, of protection physically to keep them safe. If you even think of the modern day firefighter, right, you have a person that is wearing street clothes one moment, and then they're fighting a fire, or they're engaging in a car accident, a dangerous situation at a moment's notice. So they have their turnout gear, and they have boots that have steel reinforcement. They have their pants that are thick and fire proof. They have a jacket, right? They have a hood that goes over their head. They have a helmet, right? They have a face shield. They have oxygen. They have these things in place to protect them and keep them safe, right? So we can picture this from our just our everyday life of putting on clothes that protects us, right? Um, but we also know that, right, the clothes make the man, right? We've learned from business that you might be wearing a suit, you might be wearing a Rolex watch, you might have great fancy shoes on, and you kind of just exude wealth and power, right? And people want to buy your product or whatever, right? But today we're talking about putting on Christ and putting on the clothing of righteousness, of holiness, of truth, right? And we are in this metaphor. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10 says, I will rejoice greatly in the Lord. My soul will exalt my God, for God has clothed me with garments of salvation. In Romans chapter 13, verse 12, Paul writes these words: The night is almost gone and the day is near. Therefore, let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Galatians chapter 3, 27. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 24, put on the new self, which is the likeness of God, has been created in righteousness and holiness of the truth. So we can point to many scriptures that show the power of being clothed in God, or clothed in righteousness, clothed in truth, clothed in honesty, right? And to put on this garment, right? In fact, that's the tradition of the garments. In the Roman world, they had robes and they had stoles, and those meant different things. They meant different positions and different statuses, and we even carry that into our own world. Think of who wears a robe in our world. Well, a judge. A judge wears a robe, right? The law wears a robe, usually a black robe, as they preside over court. Who else in our society wears a robe? A minister. A minister wears a robe as well, right? So that robe represents education, it represents a particular status, it represents a particular field of work, right? But our clothing is so important. In Colossians, we are confronted with the idea of putting on Christ. Now, this is more of a spiritual clothing, a spiritual garment. It's not physical. In fact, I think if Jesus was here in 2021, 2022, the last thing you would probably see Jesus in is a three-piece suit with a shirt and a tie, right? And a Rolex watch and fancy, expensive shoes, right? You probably wouldn't see Jesus dressed like that. You probably would see him in blue jeans. You'd see him in a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. You might see him in a hoodie, right? You would see him most likely in casual clothes that have no problem like working in the street or working in the market or walking down the road. His shoes would be sensible shoes. He'd have boots on, or sneakers, right? And these were the shoes, right, of a casual man. The shoes of everyday life, right? The clothes of everyday life. I think Jesus would be relaxed in his clothing. He wouldn't be putting on airs by appearing in this expensive $400 silk suit or whatever. But just something to think about. The clothing of Christ is a spiritual clothing. Put on or clothe yourselves in what? Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. See, being a Christian right? Leading this journey of faith, emulating Christ in the world, means that we have to have compassion in our hearts. We have to care about the story of others. We have to care about what others are going through, and we have to seek to help them. We have to be kind. In this pandemic, we've had arguments and we've had debates and we've had fear and all of that. And people put up signs on their lawns, their favorite political person or their political views, and it's usually an us versus them, and it's a right. But signs were popping up that simply said, "Be kind to each other. Be kind to each other." It's almost like in this collective trauma of the pandemic, we had to remind ourselves that we shouldn't be at odds with each other. We shouldn't be arguing all the time. We shouldn't be thinking us, them. We should be kind. We should be compassionate. We should be listening to the hurting of others. Humility, to be humble, to understand that we are a person with certain gifts, and that we have certain talents, that we have certain passions of work that we wish to engage in. But there's a sense of humility with that. I'm no better than any other person, right? Because of education, because of status as a minister, because of my station in life, my wealth, none of that. I'm no better than the least of these, right? So when we put on Christ, when we clothe ourselves in this spiritual garment, we are learning compassion, and we are learning kindness, and we are learning to be humble, right? uh, Gentleness. Well, gentleness, these things are listed as fruits of the spirit, but to be gentle. When someone's going through trauma, the last thing they need is a person that comes in and is talking really loud and do this, do that, do that. They need someone that's gentle. Think about your most tender moments in your life when you were the most vulnerable. You needed someone to hold your hand. You needed someone to pray with you, or someone to simply sit with you, to be gentle with you, right? And to be just in a quiet space, right? And then the last is patience. Being in Christ means that we cultivate patience. This is a tough thing for most of us, to be patient. We want. We go through that drive-through. We want that to happen in lightning speed, right? I placed my order here. I drove 8 feet, and that hot food, needs to be ready, and it needs to be getting handed out. I got my money ready, okay, and I'm going to be having my lunch, right? It's speedy. If I'm in line, right, at Walmart, or I'm in line at Target, or I'm in line at a store and there's 5 people in front of me, right? Am I looking at the cashier and I'm saying, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up? There's 5 people. It's Christmas, right? I got to get through the line, right? Are we working, all of us, on patience, right? So, today, as we this season, we have gone through and we have anticipated the coming of the Christ child. On Christmas Eve, we heard the nativity story, and the Christ child was born, hopefully born, yes, physically, but more importantly in our hearts. And now, on the Sunday after Christmas, we're thinking about, how do I live clothed in the spiritual garment of Christ? How do I emulate the compassion, the gentleness, the patience, right? How do I emulate the humility of Christ in my life and in my journey of faith? In the church, we need to be all these things to each other, right? We do. We need to be compassionate of the hurting of each other in the church. We have to be kind to each other and not worried about us versus them, or I want it this way and they're doing it that way. We have to be humble, and we have to listen, right? We have to be gentle with each other. The church, in a many ways, is a hurting place. It's a hurting place that the people need healing, right? I need healing, right? and I live in a hurting world. I understand the need for healing and gentleness, and we need to be patient with one another. We have gone through this idea and we planned for Christmas Eve and we were going to do it in one certain way, and then the conditions really pointed to the fact that we should change our game plan and do it on Zoom, do it in a different way. So we needed patience in all of that. So putting on Christ is about, as we heard in our scriptures, putting on a new life, putting on a new garment, entering the waters of baptism, and coming out a new creation. It involves change, and change that we need to be reminded of each day. We need to ask God in. We need to ask for God's grace in the process of sanctifying grace. It's given to us. All these things are given to us as a spiritual gift. Yes, we can will it, but if we're asking God to be these things in Christ, God is going to give us the grace so that we will be kinder, that we will be more patient, we will be more humble, we will be kinder, right? So we have to ask God in. Jesus comes in all humility as a little baby, powerless, born to peasant parents. We've said this over and over again. In an unstable world, in a world that's militarily occupied by an incredible force of the Roman Empire. There's political strife, there's religious strife, there are people that are hungry, there are people that are not adequately cared for, there are people that thirst, there are people that need clothing. There is need. There was need then, and there is need now. It is funny that at Christmas time we think of the least of these. All of a sudden, we start collecting for food pantries, and all of a sudden we start collecting clothing. And when we walk at the market basket, we give to that Salvation Army kettle. All of a sudden, but what's going to happen in January when all that stuff goes away? Are we still going to be giving? Are we still going to be recognizing the hurt that's going on in the world, the help that people need? I want to end with this. See, the knight is wearing an armor to protect himself, and the samurai warrior is wearing that armor to protect himself. He's closed off. He's built a fortress around himself, right? The firefighter who is in turnout gear is there. He's built a fortress around himself so the fire cannot penetrate. A police officer with a bulletproof vest and a gun belt and a baton and mace and a taser, that's all built around protection so that you can do the job you need to do. When we're Christian, we do not do that. As we just read, we put on the armor of light. We actually open ourselves up. We take off that armor, that protection around us. We take all that all falls away, and we are very open to the other person. We're open to what's happening in the world. We're open uh, in humbleness and with a patient heart and with a kind heart, right? We're open to being able to exercise the grace we've been given as a gift to help someone else and to change the world in that way. We talk about putting on Christ. We talk about putting on this garment of righteousness, of truth, of honesty, of a goodwill to others, right? It is a spiritual reality that is available to us through the gift of grace by God. It is opening up, not closing off. It is reaching out, not guarding in protection. It is seeing the other person, responding to their need, caring for the stranger, getting involved with things that will help humanity. I thank you for listening to this message today. I'm excited about what the churches can do in 2022. I'm excited because we have motivated people. We have people of faith. We have people that want to seek after how God is leading. And we have people that want to change the world. We have people in our churches and in our communities that want to respond to the needs of others. We have people that care. And that is our greatest strength. If we ask God into that process, we are truly blessed. If we ask God in to be with us on this journey of faith in action, we are truly blessed. I hope this week you find God's presence in the moments of your life. I hope this week that you are able to find moments of that you can help someone. I hope that you feel confident in the gifts that God has given you um, as you live your life of faith in the world. Uh, Today you can hear I'm very near the street, and you might have heard the cement trucks go by and the traffic go by. But I like that. Ministry, yes, it happens in the church, in our protected clothing of the church building. But it really happens when we open the door, when we go out, when we go down that ramp, when we go down those stairs, when we get in our car, where we go into the community where there's cars and there's trucks and there's people and there's noise. That's where the ministry takes place. You are sent out into the mission field every time you leave church. So you are a missionary, you're a preacher, you're a healer, you're an evangelist, you're a person of faith sharing your story of hurt. You're kind, you're compassionate, you're patient, you're humble in your work and in your life. Again, I thank you for being with me. You are truly a blessing to me. I enjoy giving these messages and hearing feedback. I enjoy the fact that our co hosts, our technical teams, are working on PowerPoints and they're embedding all sorts of things into, they're adding words to our worship. They're really cultivating a spirit of cooperation and bringing us another level of the worship experience. So I thank you for all of that. I thank you for all the helpers in the church, for the liturgists and for the ushers and for the greeters, and for the administrative assistants that make up the bulletin and keep me on track in my ministry. I thank you as a parishioner for coming and listening and participating in the life of the church. We have work to do in 2022, and we're going to do it by God's grace. So have a wonderful day. Again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Wonderful. Uh, God bless and have a safe week.